In this video, we'll talk about how to factor polynomials. So first, I want to introduce a concept. What is a factor and how to factor? So say we have two numbers multiplying together. 3 times 4 equals 12. And if I give you the number 12, you write it as 3 times 4. Then what you did here is to factor the number 12. And 3 and 4 here are called the factors of 12. So each is a factor of 12. Okay. Similarly, we know how to multiply two polynomials and get their product, but today we will learn, giving you the right side, how do you factor them into factors? In other words, how do you write them as negative x times x squared plus 4? Or if I give you x squared minus x equals 12, how do you factor that trinomial into x plus 4 times x minus 3? The factoring technique I will talk about in this video is called factoring the GCF. GCF here is the greatest common factor. This should be the first step when you factor any polynomials. So you should always check if there's any GCF to factor. For example, if I give you 6x squared minus 26. All right, so here you want to check if there's any greatest common factor between the two terms. So what are the two terms here? First term is 6x squared. Second term is negative 26. So what common factor do they have in common? Okay, so of course they don't have x in common. One has x squared, one has no x in it. So it's just the number. What number factor do they have in common? For 6, that's 2 times 3, right? For 26, that's 2 times 13. All right, I think 2 is the only common factor they have. That's the greatest common factor between those two terms. I'm going to factor out that 2. And now the rest I'm going to put in the parentheses. So each original term divided by 2 will go into the parentheses. So 6x squared divided by 2, which is 3x squared. Okay, the second term, negative 26 divided by 2, that's negative 13. And now I'm done factoring the GCF of these two terms. Let's look at another example. Let's see, 30x to the 4th minus 20x to the 5th. All right, so we want to factor the greatest common factor first. So do they even have a GCF? Right. So first of all, between the numbers, between the coefficient, 30 and 20, the coefficient has a 10 in common. That is the greatest common factor for the number part. And now for the variable part, x to the 4th and x to the 5th, what do they have in common? X to the 4th, that's what they have in common. So 10x to the 4th is the GCF of these two terms. We'll factor that out and the rest will go into the parentheses. Right, so 30x to the 4th divided by 10x to the 4th. That's 30 divided by 10, 3. x to the fourth divided by x to the fourth, that's 1. Okay, so first term, 3. Second term, negative 20 x to the fifth divided by 10x to the fourth. So negative 20 divided by 10, negative 2. And x to the fifth divided by x to the fourth. If you look at that, on top and the bottom, you can cancel out an x to the fourth, right? And what's left is x to x, right? X to the fourth is canceled out. So that's the answer. Now let's check out this example. We want to factor the GCF. So first of all, what is the GCF of these 3 terms? Well, first of all, the x will not be in it because 6 doesn't have an x term. So let's look at the number part. What factor do they have in common? It's pretty obvious, it's 3, right? That's the greatest common factor of these 3 terms. So I'm going to factor out the 3. So inside the parentheses, first term will be 9x squared divided by 3. That's 3x squared. And second term is negative 3x divided by 3. That's negative x. Last term, positive 6 divided by 3. That's a positive 2. So now I factored the GCF for this problem. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's say we have 12x to the fourth minus 30x cubed plus 42x. Okay, I want to factor the GCF, greatest common factor. So first let's look at the number part. So 12, 30, and 42. What common factor do they have in common? What is the greatest common factor? All right, so 12, I can see they're both factors of multiples of 6. So 12 is 2 times 6, 30 is 5 times 6, and 42 is 7 times 6. And 6 is the greatest common factor for the number part. 6, factor that out. And for the variable part, it looks like the greatest common factor will be the x. All right, so factor out 6x. What goes inside the parentheses? Well, the first term is the original first term divided by 6x. That's 2x cubed. Now, second term is negative 30x cubed divided by 6x. So negative 30 divided by 6, negative 5x cubed divided by x. We can cancel out an x. So x cubed becomes x squared. Right, so x squared. And last term will be 42x divided by 6x. So first of all, 42 divided by 6 is 7, positive 7. X divided by x is 1. And then that's the answer of factoring the GCF for this problem. Now let's look at the following 2 problems. We want to factor out the GCF, greatest common factor. So you can see the 2 problems have in common is their leading coefficient is negative. So usually when we see the leading coefficient being negative, we want to factor out the negative sign. So take the first problem, for example. Since the leading coefficient is negative 4, since it's negative, we need to factor out that negative sign. Negative. And then between 4 and 24, the greatest common factor is 4. Anything else? Nothing else. That's the GCF. Okay, so I factor out negative 4, so now each term inside the parentheses will be the original term divided by negative 4. First term is x. Second term is negative 24 divided by negative 4, which is a positive 6. All right, that's the first problem. Now let's look at the second one. Similar concept. The leading coefficient is negative 2. Which is negative? We need to factor out the negative sign. Now, anything else? The number part, it's 2, right? For the variable part, it's x. So we will factor out the negative 2x. So now each term will be divided by negative 2x and go into the parentheses. Negative 2x cubed divided by negative 2x. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Now 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. X squared divided by x is x. Now last term, negative 2x divided by negative 2x is a positive 1. And that's the answer. This is the end of this video, and I hope you find it helpful, and I will see you in the next video.